Hey, it's Tim. Pickup Truck Plus History Talk, joined today by Byron Hurd. He's the editor at thedrive.com. We're going to talk about this GM transmission kerfluffle issues. What the hell's going on with these transmissions? Wheel lockup issues, things you need to know as a potential customer. But we want to share some details because, really interestingly enough, Byron and I worked together in a way on this story. And it's the first time in my career I can remember where we've worked together, although we're different outlets, we're competitors in, yeah, right, as much as it
Yeah.
can be. But I think it gives people really good information on what is going on with these transmissions. And he took the little thing I wrote and went beyond it, and I took what he wrote, and so we've had this really good relationship going on. I've known Byron for years; he's known me for years, so it's been great. So, without further ado, because nobody wants to hear about our past history that much, let's hop into this. So, this story came out November, what did I say, 13th, 2024. So, we had a Chevy Silverado, GMC Sierra, and GM SUVs got recalled. Or what was happening was the rear wheels were getting locked up. So, we were driving on the road. As you can imagine, the rear wheels getting locked up because the transmission issue was, I'm going to go with a problem. I just a theory I have. It's a bad problem. You lose control, and this was really causing massive problems for the heavy duty trucks because these were commercial operators who couldn't drive their trucks because the trucks were not drivable. And so this was a recall. And typically, what happens in our work is we run these recall stories, and things get fixed, and life moves on. And I had dug into the information and kind of was looking at what's going on, park shifting. And interesting enough, the recall talked about diesel engines, which led me to do a pretty poor video where I thought about it was just different transmissions. Well, it turns out it's not different transmissions. It's just a lot of torque those wheels. So I did a bad video. But anyways, I learned more. And then a few months went by, I guess, maybe several months went by, more like a year. And I was having me on Facebook one day, and I saw where somebody had posted that a new Gen 3 valve body was being released for the 10 speed up transmission for the wheel lockup issue. And this Gen 3 valve body was supposed to fix. So the valve body, it's on the transmission. It basically tells transmission what to do. It's the brains behind the transmission. It tells it when's to shift, when's not, when to do the gears. And the person who posted this image on Facebook said that the mechanic who installed it said it was fantastic, much better wiring, much better reliability, overall better product. I confirmed with GM that this was a real valve body and it was going to fix the problem, and the nightmare was going to be over because this was a bad deal. I mean, people were sitting around with these trucks and couldn't do anything. And one of the things I was in Michigan with Byron about, I don't know, what, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever, for a Ram event, and I was actually playing golf with some GM employees there, and they were telling me that they were actually slowing down production at one of their plants because the heavy duty customers were being given like Malibus to drive as loaners. And they're like, they can't even do any of their job with these cars. They need these trucks. So they were trying to reduce inventory. They're just trying to hold things back to allow more fixes going through the factories and get things all caught up. That's what we're trying to do. And so that's kind of where I was like, all right, that's cool. And then this guy over here, Byron figures out, wait a minute here. The Valve 3 bodies didn't fix everything. They were just for light duty trucks because, Byron, you had people reach out to you who said that heavy duty trucks weren't being fixed.
Yeah. So we had a gentleman reach out to us. He'd been trying to contact GM customer care and escalate this issue. He had a 2023 GMC Sierra HD, a 3500, and so a diesel, obviously. And he had it for maybe, I think it was about 6 weeks as the second owner. He'd purchased it used earlier this year, and the valve body went out on him. And so we had to get the truck towed to the dealership after it mowed it on him. And after he got it there, he found out this wasn't the first time this had happened. So this truck only had about 30,000 miles on it when he bought it. Well, it turns out the previous owner had brought it into the dealership because the valve body had failed. And he had gotten so sick of waiting that he just traded the truck in, bought something else, and left. So the dealership sat on this used truck until they got a warranty part and put it in the truck and then resold it to our guy. And so when he got it, obviously he only had it for a couple thousand miles before it broke again, and he took it in, and he wasn't aware of this issue prior and hadn't been alerted by the dealership that it was a problem with his particular truck before he
Mhm.
bought it. because why are they going to reveal that something was wrong with the truck if they don't have to disclose that, right? So he drives off with this thing, uses it for a few weeks, it breaks, and he's in the Air Force. He was looking at a permanent change of station coming up pretty soon here now. We first spoke to him back in like late July, early August, and he's gotten his truck back since, which is the good news. But he's about to ship off, and he had bought a trailer that he was going to use to do his move. So essentially, like, he was taking advantage of the perks that they offer him as a member of the service, where essentially like they pay him to move himself. And so he purchased this truck with the truck and the trailer with all of this in mind. And now he had a broken truck, no ETA on a replacement part, which was the real problem for him. Because if he could have gotten a new valve body and been on his way, it wouldn't have been a huge deal. He was under warranty. There were no real concerns with that. But the problem was there were no parts. And as it turns out, it's because GM was working on a new part, new replacement procedure that would involve replacing some additional items in addition to just the valve body plate, which was the main like component that's causing them issues. So this new whole thing was still in the works, and they didn't have the parts to support this yet. So the whole pipeline was getting choked up essentially. And he was one of many people who've been waiting weeks or months in some cases to get their trucks back. And so he was coming up on about 2 months by the time we got in touch and started going down this road. So like I said, he's gotten his truck back. As it turns out, he got the valve body that was originally shipped with the vehicle for the repair, is what it looks like, not the new replacement unit. And those replacements that are just now shipping are the ones that are good for the diesel, the high torque applications, essentially. So the heavy duties, anything that's shipped with a diesel, even if it was a light duty Duramax. So those are now in circulation with these new components. And that's kind of where we are with the whole story right now.
And that's where we thought it was going to end. That's where we thought, okay, this is going to be fixed. And that's where I thought things would end. And then we've had another issue come up. So we have my friend, the car guy online, who's done a lot of videos of stuff. And he interviewed Nate from Next Gen Transmissions, who, let's just say Nate and GM are not on best buddy terms. I don't think they go out for drinks every Friday night and send each other love letters, because he has some opinions about the GM transmissions, and he has voiced these opinions. And these videos are pretty tough to watch if you're a GM fan. I'll just put it that way, because he does not like these things at all and thinks that this transmission is rather poor, if way to say it. And so you reached out to Nate, and you and I were talking about this when you were at the story, because I was going to be part of a live stream, and I decided not to because I don't know enough about the story to get involved, and it's not my place to be involved personally. I'm not going to defend GM, and I'm not here to defend anybody or advocate for anybody. I don't know what the issue is. My thing is customers are mad because they can't get the trucks back on the road. It's just a part availability issue and getting the fixed issue. That's the problem. But Nate thinks otherwise. He thinks this transmission and the design of it and the application of it is, well, absolutely terrible. he had quite a few really good quotes, as the way to say it. And so GM had said that they are working on a valve body replacement. They're going any delay, working to deliver parts and make repairs as soon as possible, which is quite exceptional. You got this quote from somebody at General Motors, because here's the thing that happens with recalls is lawsuits.
Yeah.
So most times automakers won't comment beyond just recall happened, because we live in a society that loves to sue. So they don't want to say anything more than they have to. And so GM stepped up here, and they actually gave a quote about they're working on getting more availability, and they've launched a valve body service repair process, and they're working on getting parts out there. But as to the fix itself, Nate from Next Gen Drivetrain has some thoughts. In his words, yeah, he doesn't like them. So what was your sense from Nate and getting to his view on this truck and these transmissions?
Well, and there's a couple of things at play here, because I mean, you look at this 10-speed. I mean, it was co-developed with Ford, and they started working on it back in like the early mid-teens, I guess we'd say. And the first vehicles with it started to show up in like 2017, 2018, thereabouts. And so the early versions of this transmission didn't have this problem. They have several other problems here and there, like their issues that have led to recalls, I believe, now on both sides of that split. And So, like, there's no, universal judgment on these because they are slightly different. The Ford version has never been identical to the GM version, but they are pretty close. And the commonality was greater in the first generation. And the key difference going to the second generation, which would be from about 2019 on, is the design of the valve body itself and the way the valves are set up to actually engage the clutches within the transmission. So you have this transmission has two outputs essentially on it. There's a clutch on each one, and one clutch controls essentially half the gears in the transmission. The other clutch controls the other half. So depending on which gear you're in, one clutch should be open and one should be closed. And the problem that actually causes the lockup is when both the clutches try to engage at the same time, essentially trying to send power through two gears at once, and you can't do that. And so at best, you get a fail-safe mode. At worst, you get a lockup. So that design was really that flaw was introduced with the Gen 2 version of GM's 10-speed. All right, so the first generation of both the Ford and GM gearbox use a system to regulate the engagement of the clutches that uses what they call latch valves. The current Ford version of the transmission still uses that design, and that's why it doesn't have this problem. GM switched to a different design that essentially floats like a little plastic ball that essentially regulates the pressure in the lines to like help the clutches engage and disengage. The why and the what really isn't important. It's the fact that they're different that is the reason why GM has this problem and Ford doesn't. So we've reached this point where Nate's idea essentially here is that GM's design for this is not the best. The implementation of it is faulty, and fixing the valve body, pressure plate, and adjusting the springs is kind of a stopgap. It's a band-aid. Essentially, what's going to happen is it's reducing the rate at which this naturally existing wear in the gearbox contributes to this issue happening, but it won't necessarily prevent the issue from happening entirely. And so in his words, essentially GM's kind of punting this down the field, like making it the customer's problem. Because when you look at like the vehicles that were recalled, they were through, I believe it was 2022, depending on the model year. Some of them were the cutoff at like 2020. I think the Cadillac sedans that were added later, it was through 2022. And those I think that window was selected strategically because it was essentially the customers who were likely to be out of warranty right now, who would be making noise if they had to take the car in for this problem and had to pay to get it fixed. The vehicles that were left out of the recall aren't necessarily left out because they don't have the problem, but they're left out because if the problem does come up, they're going to be taken care of by the dealership regardless because they should be under warranty. If they're outside of mileage on the warranty, then that becomes an issue, obviously. But year-wise, they were probably still going to be covered when the recall was announced. So there's that issue to contend with. And I mean, looking back, and Nate confirmed this, there hasn't been a design change to any of this that would impact the way the valve body performs until 2025. So the plate that is the pressure plate that is in this new kit is the same one that they've been using in the 2025 model year trucks since the model year changeover. So theoretically, all of these parts are in the newer trucks, but they've been seeing valve body failures in 2025 model year vehicles. We haven't seen yet whether it's going to be at the same rate as the failures in the 2024 and older ones. So this is why Nate is very skeptical that we're going to see an improvement from this, because it sounds like at best it might make it take a little longer for symptoms to show up, but it's probably not a permanent solution.
Yeah, and this is where he said, I believe at the end of the article, something about GM gave themselves a high
Yeah.
five.
Yeah, for the redesign of the actual of the valve body plate itself, like because essentially what he said was, and I left some of it out because again it was getting into the weeds on the engineering of it, but that they had essentially changed the shape of some of the holes in the plates, and just basically made it so that the flow, like the actual dimensions of the holes weren't any different, but the shapes of them were. And he said essentially, like if you handed this to somebody with no engineering background, they would look at it and go, "It's the same picture," right? But for someone who's actually like been in the weeds with these gearboxes, he's like, "Oh, okay, I see what maybe they're trying to do, but I don't see where it goes. Like he didn't actually see like what the actual light at the end of that tunnel was. So we're in a weird spot because like this is all fresh. He hasn't really had a chance to like, I mean, he's seen this repair procedure done with his own eyes using their like updated stuff prior to them making it official. So like he's familiar with this process and everything already. It's just we haven't really seen yet the results. Like if the trucks do stop breaking, then great. Then he's wrong, we're wrong, fine. GM's done. They can wipe their hands of this issue. But from what he said about the 2025 trucks, I mean, this is a man who's in the business of rebuilding these gearboxes. So either guys who want a bigger, beefier gearbox than what they're getting stock, or they just like it broke and they're like, well, I just don't want it to break again. These are the guys who are going to him, right? So he's going to see more failures than most other shops are going to see outside of like an actual GM dealership, because like this is the whole crux of his business. So there's that angle to it, and of course he does make money doing this. So it's in his best interest to say that GM builds an inferior product because he wants to sell you a superior one. So there's that angle to consider too. I mean, but everybody here is just trying to make money, right? That's why all of us are here. We're covering the business that's covering the business. It's
Yeah.
money's changing hands, right? So
Yeah, hopefully at this point you've already seen. Let's see, there's 16 minutes of 3 ads in this video, so yeah, watch all 3. Don't quit.
right.
But I think it's very interesting because it's like there is always that opportunity out there. People talk about planned obsolescence, right? So, is this being built in a way that it's built to fail? There's always that argument that's been out there, and I'm always skeptical of that one because there are vehicles that do last longer, and so how do you explain those? And then if you do have a known problem, like let's say GM has a known problem, well, look back to like say Ram and Dodge Ram, you want to call them. They've had a bad reputation for quality for years. They've spent billions trying to get that quality reputation back. So it actually costs those businesses a lot more money to build a reputation back than it would be to build something to fail to get you to buy a truck again. Because that's always business wise. It's like I don't always understand that philosophy because why would you want somebody to have your product fail? Because odds are they're not going to buy your product again. They can buy something else. So
Yeah.
that's a weird one for me. But that's okay. People, I mean, I'm not going to argue that point because people have that viewpoint, and that viewpoint could be very, very accurate. Then you have the piece where his business is great, man. He's sold a lot of transmissions, and he probably does a great job. He sounds very much like he's in the know. And if I was somebody who was a over the road kind of hauler, like I was hauling, what am I going to say? If I was doing like short haul kind of stuff, I was doing hot shot driving, if I was doing RV hauling and stuff, I probably would go to Nate and get my transmission done from him because the Duramax is a great engine. But if they got a weak link with the transmission, I certainly want to know about it. And if my transmission goes out, I don't know if I want GM to put another bell body in with a known flaw in my, if that's your viewpoint on it, a known flaw with that. And I'm sure if I'm a GM engineer and I read your story and I watch those videos, I'm probably slamming a beer right now and I'm probably pissed off because, maybe it was my idea to put the ball in there. And maybe now I'm really upset because I validated this damn thing and now people are saying it's crappy and I'm really pissed off about it. So I'm sure there's multiple sides of that. And I have to wonder, a company that is multinational that makes trillions of dollars every year, it makes me wonder how they would have made a mistake this massive considering the trucks are the bread and butter for GM. This is not an area where they cut corners. If you're going to tell me that they're going to cut corners and say, they're small Chevy tracks, I totally would believe you there. But cutting corners in heavy duty truck for GM with how much reputation's on the line and how much their quality and reliability is on the line for those guys, that's a huge deal. That's not an area where they really cut corners. I mean, that's something they don't do. But that's something people will accuse them of because we're in a truck culture, and that's something that people get very feisty about. And I appreciate that to 1,000 degree. I've been doing this job 15 years, and I know those comments. So I thought it was really interesting that you had gotten in the heavy duty side and seen that viewpoint from that customer, and I've said many times, and I think the fundamental problem with all this stuff is like your gentleman said, that the Air Force guy, if he had gotten the part the next day, had installed and been on his way, this would not have been a story.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have part two. You wouldn't have this never gone anywhere. But It's the fact that there either isn't a replacement part available right away, and or the replacement part fails again, that makes this into a bigger story.
Yeah. Yeah, because it just kills your confidence in the car, especially,
Yeah.
like, and like I say car because and that's the thing is I'm a car guy. Like I like, the reason why this is especially like unique for Tim and I is that I'm not usually the truck person. Like we literally have a guy on staff who does truck stuff, but this just happened to fall in my lap. And so like, chasing the story has been a learning experience for me because there's a lot about this stuff that I didn't understand. And honestly, just spent like half a day just learning how a valve body works, which I still don't really understand how a valve body works. It's one of those little ball mazes they give you when you're 7 years old and you try to get the little thing in the hole, only it's trying to do that 17 times with hydraulic
Right.
pressure. Basically, like that's it. It's voodoo. It makes no sense whatsoever. But like it's been a great experience for me talking to these guys and like hearing from some of these. I mean, and I have heard from literally dozens of HD guys who are either waiting on trucks, guys who work in service shops who are fixing these trucks. Like we've heard it from everybody. And if any of you are, readers who are out there right now, thank you for all the tips. Thank you for sending in the service bulletins and stuff like that. That's all been massively helpful in putting the story together. So like it's been a great experience, but and one that it's been a good opportunity to get a chance to like touch base with an audience and a group that I don't normally deal with. And like, these are your people essentially. So like this little liaison makes a lot of sense in that context where, you wouldn't normally see my face here with this kind of thing. So
Yeah. Well, we're happy to have your face here.
thank you.
Welcome. Yes. We'll pour some whiskey for you and we'll have a good time. All right. For more, check out thedrive.com. I'm over there all the time. Really good stuff. And Byron writes quite a fun stuff over there. He's actually has a story today about AM radio, which, by the way, that is a truck guy realm. We do AM radio a lot out here in the country. So
Yeah.
I happen to read that story today. So check that out, thedrive.com. Also check out the videos up on the channel over here and the website down below, pickuptrucktalk.com. As always, thanks for watching. We will see you down the road.